Hi again. Welcome to another episode of 10-Minute Talkies. While I wanted to do a series of podcasts about bipolar disorder, I want to break things up a little and talk about triggers. Triggers. What's a trigger? Just off the top of my head, a trigger is something that pushes you to react in an unhealthy or dysfunctional manner. So, say for example, a breakup could be a trigger. A breakup could trigger a patient to um, have a psychotic breakdown, or in my case, it triggered me to have hallucinations or perceptual disturbances. This means that I saw things in my head that are not normal. It's not the usual imagination. It's not something that I could control. Um it wasn't something that I usually experienced in my day-to-day existence. It was out of the ordinary, it was disturbing, and I knew that it could turn into a full-on psychotic breakdown if I ignored it. So the trigger was the breakup, and um the reaction from my system was the hallucinations. So that's it. Okay, this is off the top of my head. Why don't I give you a textbook definition in a bit? So, according to Google, it is an event or circumstance that is the cause of a particular action, process, or situation. So, it's an event or a circumstance that causes something else. So, like I said earlier, a breakup caused hallucinations. Okay, so that's a trigger. So, what I wanted to discuss about triggers is that, do you have to avoid them? Do you have to avoid them completely? Do you have to try and live an existence where triggers don't exist? Or like stick your fingers up your ear and just say tra la 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 when triggers happen? Do you do that? Or what do you do when triggers happen? Okay. Oh yeah, and lastly, are medicines really bad for you, or are antipsychotic or psychotropic medicines really bad for you because they're chemical? Okay, so let me discuss things. Personally, I don't agree with the thought that one has to avoid triggers at all costs. It is not realistic that in this world we would not be able to encounter triggers at all. Triggers happen. They're always there. It is definitely a part of existence. The best thing that you could do when triggers happen is that you have to find a way to cope with it. I feel like the best way to deal with triggers when they happen is when you find a way to cope with the situation. The next thing is, so I already answered the question, what do you do when triggers happen? Find a way to cope. Um, Personally, I coped using medicines. I enlisted the help of psychiatrists and made sure that I got on antipsychotic medicine so that the hallucinations will stop. It's because I already have high coping mechanisms when I'm in daily life. I work, I read, I listen to music. I don't really mope. I don't get depressed. I don't live in a dysfunctional manner. I even in my situation right now, I just lost a job actually, and I'm currently on the lookout for a new job. I'm still going. I still am working on projects. I'm still hitting up friends who have projects and work on the tiny things, even if they don't pay a huge amount of money or as much as what I used to enjoy. I keep going. I work. Um, I have a lot of fun playing music. I just bought a new headset with my separation pay. And it was the music is so good using that headset, and everything's just so high def on that headset, and I enjoy it. It's the simple things for me. That's how I cope. I haven't really been reading books lately, but I will say that I like reading the devotionals, I like reading short stories, but I will say that reading has helped me not only divert my attention from what I had to cope with, but it also helps me enrich myself. So learn new things, gain new insights, just grow in character because I gained new insights. So I already have the right coping skills in my day-to-day existence. So I didn't really need like therapy to keep me in check. I do have a therapist. I have a clinical therapist, but it's more on anchoring really, like for her to check me if I'm still on the right path. So for me, these are the things that are helpful in coping with severe trauma like I've gone through, because it was not just a breakup. Actually, I've had so many things happening in the past year. Like my dad had a health issue that was really major. um what else? I had another breakup, so that was also pretty traumatic. I also found out that the person was cheating on me for the whole of our relationship. So it was not a pretty thing to discover, but I didn't have the hallucinations until the last breakup, which maybe it's because I really cared about the person. So going back to the thought, yes, you need to find good coping mechanisms. So personally, I read, I also write in a journal. I listen to music. I also have a lot of friends. Having a lot of friends to tell things to is a very, very big coping mechanism, because we always need to be with people. I mean, even introverts need to have even just that one person to tell their struggles to. Like, all of these struggles, it's like stones in a backpack, it's baggage. And if you don't enlist the help of somebody to help you carry that baggage, you will really you will really struggle with the weight of that. So it's good to have a social network of people who are there to help you. So there, for me, triggers are not meant to be avoided. Number two, when triggers appear in your life, you need to find a good coping mechanism and good social anchors in order to help you cope with the trigger. And lastly, are medicines all that bad? Are medicines all that bad? Personally, I use them to cope. I told you earlier. Um, there are patients who will not be able to handle life without medicines. I'm one of those. I will say that mood stabilizers have helped me get my anger issues under control, my impulsivity under control. Oh, yes, I'm actually still pretty impulsive. Like there was a time yesterday when I danced where after I withdrew money from the ATM. I danced in the middle of the street. Not really middle of the street, on the sidewalk. Yeah, I did. It's impulsiveness like that that is just fun, right? But there are impulsiveness that there are behavioral impulsivity b- impulsive behaviors that are actually pretty dangerous, like um hmm, shoplifting. There are patients who shoplift because it's one of their things. It's one of their compulsive behaviors. So personally, um, if there are patients who have those maladaptive impulsive behavior, they really need to be on medicines. So for me, one thing that the medicines helped me curb was my anger. Aside from my anger, yeah, anger and lashing out and becoming physical when I'm angry. Like, yeah, I was pretty at risk for assaulting people whenever I was angry in the past. So the medicines helped control me. So for me, there are cases wherein medicines are really, really helpful. The antipsychotic, on the other hand, helped to alleviate or even curb the hallucinations entirely. So while my mood stabilizer helped my core stabilize from the anger, the mood, everything. It's the antipsychotics that helped stabilize another part that got triggered, which was the hallucinations. And these would not have been controlled without medicines. There are people who can definitely try and live life without medicines. Like there are depressives who are able to cope without medicines. But to be honest, I'm a big fan of medicating, not just because it's easier. Well, definitely because it's easier, but also because it takes the pain out of having to cope with one's disorder. So if you have been clinically diagnosed as having, say, bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, I would suggest that you really get on medicines because it would really help you cope with life if you're under medication. So yes, triggers are not to be avoided. Coping mechanisms and people are important in dealing with triggers. And lastly, there's no shame in taking medicines for triggers. So this has been 10-minute talkies. I went over the limit. I went up to 11 minutes past. Probably will go up to 12 minutes. But thank you so much for listening to me. Hope to catch you in the next episode. Bye.